I'm Megan Skidmore, and welcome to the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I'm a woman, daughter, sister, spouse, mother, life coach, and person of faith on a mission to normalize asking questions and allowing doubts on a faith journey and all aspects of life. Join me as I bring this traditionally taboo topic out of the shadows of shame and into the light. I firmly believe we normalize through more talking and engaging in discussion. More talking peels back, exposes, and erases the layers of shame associated with asking questions and allowing doubts. When we are more authentic about our journey, we are more powerful because shame has no power in the face of authenticity. If you come from a high demand background, it's possible you haven't taken the opportunity to thoughtfully consider your core values. Brené Brown said, living into our values means that we do more than profess our values. We practice them. We walk our talk. We are clear about what we believe and hold important, and we take care that our intentions, words, thoughts, and behaviors align with those beliefs, end quote. Before you can walk your talk, you must identify what your core values are. Research has shown that it is traumatizing when a therapist or mental health support person tries to impose their values upon their client. Identifying your core values is like thinking ahead of time. It reduces decision fatigue. It becomes your North Star, guiding you as you navigate new decisions or decisions you've come to realize that perhaps you didn't get to choose in the first place. Click the link in the show notes for my Determine Your Values guide. It will help you take the first steps to living a values-driven and aligned life by helping you identify what matters most to you. First Friday's free coaching, a confidential group to bring all the questions, vent frustrations, share fears, express doubts. Navigating a new and uncertain reality is hard enough. Let's remove the worry of judgment from others. In this group, I will help you help yourself so that you can be there for your child, family, loved ones, and for you too. Click the link in the show notes to sign up. You must complete the agreement. Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast. I'm Megan Skidmore, your host, and I'm thrilled to have my guest, Trudi Lebron, with me here today. Welcome, Trudi.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
Oh, my goodness. I admire Trudi so very much, and I know you will too after you listen to all the wisdom she has to offer. Trudi, I want to give the floor to you. Can you take a minute and share with everybody just kind of your origin story, where you're from, your family, your upbringing, a faith of origin, if you have one, kind of you include your education, your profession, all of those things. Just give us a little
I'll give you the whole,
well-rounded
cool.
view, Trudi.
Sure. Okay. So I grew up in central Connecticut, in the inner cities in central Connecticut, New Britain, and Hartford. I grew up in a, lower middle class or upper lower class, lower middle class, family for my early life. And then my parents got divorced when I was, like maybe in fifth grade. So about 10, 11 years old. And that really impacted the experience that, we were having, me and my sister were having. I come from a family of many children. We have siblings on my dad's side, on my mom's side. We're like a very kind of mixed and blended family. And yeah, I grew up in inner cities, going to, in really diverse communities and a very diverse family. My mom is a white woman, and who also grew up like in poverty in an inner city in Connecticut. And my father is a Puerto Rican man, dark skin, who came to the United States, to the mainland United States from Puerto Rico when he was 18 years old and didn't speak a word of English. Right. So we had a very interesting and kind of diverse family, and we lived in very diverse communities. So one of the things that I love about when I reflect back on my childhood, one of the best things that I remember is how diverse like the community was. Like I went to school with kids who were from everywhere. We were Black, we were brown, we were white, we were Asian, we were African immigrants, right? Like we were from all over the world. And of course, as a kid, like there were a lot of dynamics there to kind of like grow up in, especially as someone who was biracial. Um, but it really, yeah, like it was just a really beautiful thing that I didn't realize was kind of unique to that experience that I grew up in until I got older and started meeting people who were like, oh, I didn't meet a Black person until I went to college. Like, I had no idea that that was like a thing. So where do I go from there? So it really
So
struggled in
can I
school.
ask a
Okay, yeah,
quick
go ahead.
question? Yeah,
Please.
so
Yeah, focus me.
you're biracial.
Yes,
Your dad was born in Puerto Rico, moved here
yes.
at the age of 18, not speaking a bit of English. And your mother, you said, is Caucasian background?
Yep, she's a white woman, mixed white woman. No, like
Okay.
there's, yeah, her
Just a
her
gen.
parents were also very mixed. Like there's some Irish, some German,
Okay.
some like all a bunch of things, a bunch of things.
Yes. Okay. That's what I was curious to know. Okay. Keep
Yeah,
going. You said in school you.
yeah. I really struggled in school, so I had a
Okay.
really, I had a nice. And I grew up at, I'm actually really right now loving thinking about this. Like, I grew up in the 80s and the early
Mm-hmm.
90s when like there were no cell phones. And, I really believe that my generation of folks are the last generation that had like that kind of wild childhood. You know what I
That's
mean?
true.
Like just
I
like out in
do.
the woods and riding our bikes,
Yep,
doing all
I
the
do.
things.
That was my
And
childhood too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm spending a lot of time thinking about that these days. And that really shaped me. I really identify as like this kind of, I have this wild soul that can't be contained, that is all of the reasons that got me in trouble as a kid and all of the reasons that I've been able to create the life that I've had, that I have for myself today. So I really struggled in school. I had undiagnosed or untreated learning disabilities, ADHD.
Okay.
Those turned into like behavioral problems. And by the time I was in middle school, I was completely disengaged from school. I didn't want to be
Mhm.
in school at all. I couldn't wait to drop out. And to make a very long story short, I ended up dropping out of school in ninth grade, 7 months pregnant. So I was
Okay.
15 years old, dropping out of ninth grade pregnant with my first child. And by the time I was 16, I had two kids and
Wow.
wasn't in school. I had an eighth grade education,
Yeah.
couldn't work, not old enough to work, not old enough to go to school, didn't have money. My mom was working. I lived with my mom, but my parents were divorced. When I think back now about like how my mom made things happen, I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I can't even imagine. But yeah, like, just kind of struggling.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
So
yeah,
can you talk about the role of faith or religion, if any, if that
sure.
came into play? Your dad being from Puerto Rico, I know a lot of Latin American countries, not all necessarily, but a lot have a strong background in the Catholic faith.
Yeah. My
Um,
grandparents certainly did, and my grandparents lived in Puerto Rico for, our whole life, and so we didn't like grow up with that strong of an influence. My father is not very he's not practicing religious
uh-huh.
person at all. So, we went to church sometimes,
Hmm.
not a lot. There was probably a certain point in my life where we were kind of going to like regular kind of Christian church. But
Yeah.
nothing, but and throughout my life, I've kind of experienced many different types of faiths. I've been to church with, friends and different family members and have
Sure.
people of all different cultures. And like in some ways very similar to school, my nature just really rebels against anything that feels contradictory, right? Like anything at all. So even, even
Hmm.
as a kid thinking about punishment and sin and evil and watching people's behavior in the world and how certain behaviors were bad and that was like acceptable, like things just didn't add up to me. And so, I didn't reject it in like necessarily an overt way because I was never forced to participate in it, but it wasn't something that stuck, right? It wasn't like
Yeah.
religion wasn't. On the other hand, I've always been like deeply moved by what I describe as like a purpose and a calling. And if people in my community listen to my podcast, like kind of in my world, they know I'll say like I get downloads from the universe, right? Like I get these like,
Yeah.
these kind of directions that like don't fit into a religion in a box. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um,
I
but I
do.
do feel deeply like I believe that we all have a purpose, that we all have gifts, that we are very much synced up with the universe around us. And I think like I don't know anything for sure, but that feels true for me.
That's so beautiful. I love that you called it downloads from the
Yeah.
universe. One thing that I have learned on this journey of mine, this faith journey, but also the overarching just life journey, is there's different vocabulary words, different ways of
Hmm.
describing similar phenomenon among
Sure.
all people, really.
Agree.
And so when I hear you say that, I can totally relate. These downloads, these to feel moved, you said, by a purpose, a calling. That's very much how I feel as well in what
Yeah.
I do. So I think that's just beautiful. You might have explained it in maybe a little bit different way, but it's the essence is the same. The
Yeah.
principles behind it are the same. And I love that so, so much. So,
I can also say that, and I know we're going to get a little bit like, or maybe a little more than a little bit into like the work that I do, but I also really kind of see the way that I do my work and the way that I live as a practice of faith, right? Like I really am, I try to make decisions and to take action in ways that are really deeply aligned with like what I believe about like how we should treat people and how we should be in relationship and what my
mhm.
goals are and how those goals impact the greater world, right? Like I really feel I really feel like everything we do is just all connected. So I definitely feel very like this even the work that I do is kind of an expression of that.
I love that. I wanted to, that's just so beautiful and amazing. It really is. You said something that I want to maybe go a little deeper if you're
Yeah.
game. You said my nature rebels against anything contradictory.
Yeah.
And I think I know what you meant, but tell me what you mean. Do you mean contradictory to what you believe or what you feel in your soul, or what
Yeah.
is contradictory in and of itself?
I think all of the above, right? Like
All of the
I
above?
think yeah,
Okay.
certainly anything that is like any kind of, and there are, for example, there are certain faith groups that like really reject, you know, really reject a lot of things that I believe in as true, particularly around sexuality and gender and rights, right? Like people's rights to their body, right? And I feel like I have been in spaces where
Hmm.
the I don't know, like the feelings that are expressed about those things just feel very contradictory to what people say, their religion is about. And it's about, like
Hmm.
though so in a spiritual context and in a kind of organized religion context, that is one way, but also like in school, right? Like in school when the rules just didn't make sense. And for me, right, I couldn't sit
Yeah.
still, but like I needed to be like I couldn't function. I can't function in an environment that isn't set up for me to, not that I have to thrive, but to, to function and then to be held to be held to an arbitrary standard that doesn't align with who I am or, what I believe.
Yeah. And, and it strikes me, Trudy, your background that you shared with us, it has definitely positioned you in a place, it's put you in a place to experience these contradictions firsthand, right?
Yeah.
If you were exposed, you said you did visit lots of different religions or
Hmm.
faiths with friends or, with your family at
Sure.
some point in your earlier childhood. I mean, if you went and you were exposed to their beliefs or their ways of thinking or whatever, and it directly contradicted your life, and the opportunities that you had or what
Yeah.
you experienced firsthand, well, yeah, that's going to cause a feeling, a physical sensation, reaction,
Yeah.
whatever you want to term it, that's going to bring that up for you. And
Yeah,
so I could
absolutely.
see that would feel very contradictory. And you said yourself, some people, have told you, wow, I haven't even met a person of color, until college, right? And I think that's a key point, because if somebody hasn't been exposed to
Right.
these things and it's not affected their life in a firsthand type of way like it did for you, that's going to affect the way that they internalize
Yeah,
whatever is
absolutely.
being taught, whether it's at school or whether it's at their their religious institution or their faith of origin or
Yeah,
whatever.
absolutely.
And so, I was first introduced to you through the life coach school, and I heard you present at Mastermind a couple of years ago, whenever that
Yeah.
was. And I got your amazing book. Highly recommend it. We'll leave a link in the show notes for those who would like to get it for themselves. But you talk about really important concepts relating to race, relating to diversity, equity, inclusion.
Yeah.
And I attended your summit earlier this year, and I cannot stop thinking about some connections that I have been beginning to make when it comes to those concepts, the intersection of those concepts and religion.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say specifically religion, because I think faith and religion are two separate things. And, the summit that I attended that you put on, a lot of the participants were coaches. Quite a few of them came from a more corporate setting or a
Hmm.
business setting. And so the concepts that you were teaching, I think, were generally directed toward that type of a work setting, maybe. But I could see how applicable and important it was to intersect those concepts with religion.
Yeah.
How currently, I think there's room to grow. I think certain religions have made some steps, taken steps toward more diversity or more inclusion. Some, there's still a lot of room to grow. And I think I will always remember the way you explained the difference between equality and equity. They are not the same thing.
They're not.
And you had a drawing, a kind of a cartoon, colorful drawing of three kids that were outside of the fence of a baseball game, I think. And
Hmm.
in the first picture, they all had a crate or a box of some kind that they could each use to look over and see the game. However, when you looked closer, it wasn't what each of them needed in order to be able to see the game. The quality piece is, yeah, they were all given a box the same size,
Right.
but that did not address their individual needs. One was shorter, like younger. Um, you know, I don't remember the differences, but it
Hmm.
didn't address their needs. So the next picture was taking into account their various needs. And so they were given boxes of different heights and different sizes and whatnot. And that meant they could each see the game. So what does that have to do with
Right.
religion? I I started to connect certain things are told or taught that are made available to those who are members of a certain faith or congregation or religion. But I wonder how much the true that idea of equality, like to say, yes, anybody can come, anybody can do this, participate in
Hmm.
this. The same things are made available if you do XYZ or participate or in this way or do these things, right? Like in theory, the same opportunities are made available, which would be maybe equality. However, sometimes it just started to connect, and I'm hoping that you can maybe expand on this idea more for listeners that I have that are also from a conservative faith, of understanding this idea of how it's important to take into account this idea of equity when we're talking about making claims. Well, this is available to everyone. Like everybody
Yeah.
could receive this blessing if they do X, Y, and Z. Does that make sense? That
Yeah.
was a lot of intro to that question, but it's kind of a big topic, kind of a one that's not understood broadly.
Yeah, I think that the answer to this is a really complicated question, especially for people who have very strong, religious beliefs or faith beliefs, because what equity asks us to do is to consider like not just what's available to the person, but what, to your point, what that person needs, also what they want and what
Mm,
they believe,
yeah, true.
right? So like we need to really understand and kind of be able to find space to be in the, I think there's a couple ways to think about this, right? We have to really think about the goal. Is the goal to get someone to do what you want them to do the way that you want them to do it, right?
Mm,
Is the goal to try to get to tell someone that you have a better way or path for them? Or is the goal to be in healthy relationships with other humans? Like, what's the goal? Because what we do might be different for each of those goals. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And so when you think about equity, we have to think about one, the goal first. And then we can say, well, what are the pathways available to all of us or to both parties to
mhm.
get there? Does that make sense?
I think so. I think so. Um, so this is a tricky subject. Like an example of that, I'm just going to be brave and just talk about this here.
Yeah.
For a long time in my faith of origin, those who are of African American descent or a person of color did not have available to them to be called to the priesthood. In other words, they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't like officiate in certain ordinances, like the sacrament, the bread
Mm-hmm.
and the water. We use water in our faith. Others use wine, but it's the same concept. They couldn't baptize.
Mm-hmm.
Um, those are just a few of the things. Offer blessings
Mm-hmm.
until there was modern day revelation received in the 70s, the late 70s, by the then prophet slash president Kimball, that removed those inhibitions that made it possible for them to be able
Mm-hmm.
to have that opportunity, you know, meeting the same qualifications that any other male up to that point had live their life a certain way in order to be able to. So we know a lot more about. I'm not here to speak to whether or not that should have happened. I
Yeah.
want to look at, because everybody's going to have their own opinion about that. And the more your eyes kind of open up, like I see that whole situation differently than maybe I did in my teens or my 20s, right?
Yeah.
But knowing what we know now and the awarenesses that we have surrounding things like gender, sexuality, race, ethnicity,
Mm-hmm.
and this the things that are in place systemically that promote certain groups of people indirectly or directly over others, right? The awareness piece wasn't there in the same way in the 60s, 50s, 70s like it is today.
Yeah.
Of course, there's always room to grow, right?
Yep.
And and so I, I just wonder like how much that awareness had to do with that those leaders at the time being open to receiving and looking
Yeah.
at things in a different way. And so by broad application, what does that mean about today, right? Is it possible there are certain blind spots, right? That the
Yeah.
awareness isn't there of how certain beliefs or policies are actively harming individuals. And I don't mean just necessarily physically, although that is one way that it happens at times, but there's emotional harm.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
there's psychological harm,
Absolutely.
spiritual harm. So, like in your work, what have you seen? Um, or let me wrap my brain around this. Like when you go and you give a presentation
Hmm.
or a speech, or you go talk to a business or a corporation or a group, like what are the things that you notice that help a group, an organization kind of open up to this idea that things aren't what maybe they thought, or
Yeah.
that there's room for broadening my horizons here.
Yeah. I think that the starting point to any kind of transformation,
Mhm.
even this kind of transformation, is really acknowledging that something's not right.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. It's conversations like this that have been so healing for me on this journey. There was a time when voicing the thoughts of my heart was out of the question. I didn't know how to create the safety I needed to feel in order to speak vulnerably and openly. Through patience and doing my work, I have figured out the 3 pillars needed to turn the volume dial up. I learned to choose how much to share, with whom, how often, and where. I am in the driver's seat, not just in sharing my faith journey, but in any aspect of my life. In my upcoming pilot hybrid group, I will teach you these 3 pillars. It's called Unlocking Your Voice. You will have the keys you need to share your heart from a grounded, safe, and confident place. It starts this fall, and for a limited time, I will email you a special offer when you get on the waiting list. Find the link in the show notes. Because I believe so strongly in the work that Trudi and her staff are doing, I am making a special offer to my listeners. Be among the first 3 individuals to leave a 5-star review on Beyond the Shadow of Doubt using Apple Podcasts platform, and then email me with a screenshot of your review, and I will send you your own copy of her book, The Antiracist Business Book, an equity-centered approach to work, wealth, and leadership. Make sure to put Antiracist Business Book in the subject line.
Right? That something's not right, and that the measure of what isn't right is like inequity, is harm, is how well we're doing, kind of being, treating each other equally and equitably and humanely. I don't think I don't think it's not a surprise to me that this change was made in your faith in the 70s, right? Like after the civil rights movement and after there were legal implications in some cases for things, right? Like these things change, like our awareness changes. But in that case, I don't know. I think you really have to think about like, was that done because people realized that it was wrong? Was that change made because there was a legal requirement to change it, right? Like, was it a PR move? Like basically what I'm trying to say here is really being honest, right? Like in order to transform, you have to really be honest about the decisions that are being made and how people are being treated and what's motivating those decisions and why those decisions are there, right? The idea that um, people can or can't be put in certain positions, I think there's really an opportunity to interrogate, is that a person's choice, right? Did a human decide that? Why? Like, let's have those conversations, right? And those are uncomfortable,
A
like
human,
radically
did a
uncomfortable.
human decide that versus?
Yeah, versus being able to say that I got a message from God, or this is the word
Yeah.
of God, right? Like
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
do we know that? Like, I think that there are, and I am in no position ever to say what is
Yeah.
true or not. I don't know. Like, that is
Right.
my firm position, is I don't know. But what I do know is that humans can measure harm based on whether or not we would want it done to us.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
We can, if
that
we're
is a
honest with
measure.
ourselves.
If we're honest with ourselves, we can measure what is humane and what is harmful and what is not, based on whether or not we would like that decision or an action
Mhm.
enacted upon us, regardless of our identity.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think
Yeah.
when we realize that something like that is happening, what I believe is that there is for me anyway, a responsibility to say, like, hey, what's this about for real? Like, right,
Yeah.
what is the humane choice here?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And if we're not willing to go there, then I think there's deeper work to be done, maybe for that individual or whomever, right?
Yeah.
And that's not for me to decide, right? You hit the nail on the head. These are uncomfortable questions. This does
Yeah.
require us to go to a place of sitting in significant discomfort,
Totally.
especially when we realize that we, or maybe our progenitors, those who came before us, are the perpetrators of the harm
Yeah.
in question,
Yeah.
right?
100%. And especially when, you know, sometimes, if we're being honest, that sometimes we hold some of those biases and beliefs, and we do some of those things, maybe consciously or unconsciously as well. And what I have seen in my work consistently is that when you can create environments for people to have the most difficult conversations
Mhm.
in a way that is like productive and, with some structure and, emotionally and psychologically safe, what we find is how people are actually way more connected than not. People agree on far more than they realize. People tend to disagree on what we should do and on actions to take, but people tend to agree more than not on a lot of things. And we
That
never even
is,
know that because we can't get to the conversation.
yes, that is so fascinating. So, tell us some of your thoughts, your recommendations for creating these environments for
Yes.
people to have these difficult conversations. What are your suggestions or
Yeah.
ideas?
One of the things that I think is wildly important is, and I touched on this earlier, is really to get real about what the goal of a conversation is, or what the goal of solving a problem is. So again, are we let's say, for example, someone in your family has wildly different political beliefs than you, or religious beliefs than you, right? That's something that a lot of people are trying to navigate right now, right?
Yeah.
Let's say that example. Now we can ask ourselves some questions. Is my goal to convince this person to agree with me? Is my
Yeah.
goal to tell this person to make this person feel terrible because they don't agree with me, no matter what side you're on, right? Like, these are questions we can ask ourselves. um
Mhm.
do I love this person regardless of their political beliefs or religious differences? Like,
Mhm.
what's the most important thing? Is it getting them to agree with me, or maintaining a loving, healthy relationship, right? And I'm not telling people what to pick, right? I'm just saying, be honest about what it is that you want, right? And if it's like, I want to control someone, or I want to tell someone, you know,
Yeah.
that makes someone feel terrible, maybe that's not maybe you need to put boundaries around that relationship and just get really clear about what that relationship. But if the answer is, I love this person and want to have and be in a relationship with them, then you can start to I realize that there's a difference between, the things that we believe, the way that we treat each other, our interpersonal relationship, right? That we can
Mhm.
find ways that maybe there are topics that you don't talk about, or maybe when you do talk about topics, you practice disconnecting the idea or belief that you're debating from what it means personally about a person, right? Separating the person, like taking out that personalization or making character judgments or life judgments about people based on what they believe, right? Have those conversations separately. Talk about behavior, yeah, but don't like, you can talk about behavior, talk about relationships, put up boundaries, and you can talk about ideas and debate ideas. But if the goal is to be in a relationship and to understand each other better, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can't make accusations about people based on the things that they believe, because
Yeah.
everyone's just kind of doing their best, right? Like most people, again, most people are, in the world trying to figure out what our relationship is to this world that we live in and what lies beyond and how we got here in the first place, right? A lot of people are reckoning with that and coming to different conclusions, and like we have to like leave space for that.
So yeah, I hear what you're saying. Once you can determine what the goals are of the reason for having whatever difficult conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when the individual can then decide if this is a good thing for me, a not good
Right.
thing, a healthy thing. Do I need to, you mentioned boundaries.
Yep.
And I think it's really important that it not everybody, maybe listeners already know this, maybe some don't, but you can have boundaries with individuals, but you can also have them with groups or
Mm-hmm.
corporations
Yeah.
or businesses or institutions as well. And a boundary, by the way, is not what we're telling them what they need to do. It's,
Right.
I'll let you define. How do you define a boundary, Trudy?
Yeah, a boundary is saying that this is the container or the rules that we're setting for how we interact, whether it's in this
Mm-hmm.
discussion that we're going to have, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's in a working relationship over time, whether it's in a marriage, whether it's how we're going to be in a relationship for
Mm-hmm.
the rest of our life, right? Just the boundaries are like, this is what is acceptable and this is what isn't. And if the boundaries are crossed, then there are consequences. I'm not going to participate anymore. I'm going to take a break.
Right.
We're not going to talk, whatever.
So, what would your suggestion be as far as setting healthy boundaries goes? If maybe it's more one-sided, that determining that a boundary would be a good thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So communicating the boundary, and then you have to like enforce it. You don't
Yeah.
need like a boundary. Your boundary doesn't have to be like agreed upon by the other
Right.
person, right? Like you said it,
Yeah.
and then it's like, if you can't deal with it, then we're not in relationship in this way anymore.
Yeah. I think that's a really important thing to mention as well. The boundaries don't have to be agreed upon by everyone.
Yeah, they don't. And they don't mean you're a bad person. And if they, like they're not connected to these character judgments. They're just like,
Yeah,
no, like,
exactly. It's like, this is what I will allow into my space, and this is what I'm not okay with in my
right.
space. I found it fascinating that you said when people will actually have these conversations, they actually learn that they have much more in common than they
Yeah.
realized beforehand. And then one of the outcomes is they're much more connected than not. Why do
Yeah.
you think that they just won't start these conversations?
Well, I think that what I see as the reason for that is because we move really quickly into like character judgment and like making meaning out of just ideas. So, for example, if someone says, "Oh, I'm a Republican," it's like, you're a terrible person. Like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're this, you're that. So people will take a stance, will look at an outcome or a decision or something someone says or a position they take, and will create a whole story
Mhm. Yeah.
about what that means about who they are and where they came from and what they believe on all these other things. And we also, and this is just human behavior, this is this is how our brains work. We also have an idea about how they got to that conclusion, right? So if you're a Republican, it must be all of this, and these things must be true, and you must not care about XYZ, right? And similar to Democrats, right? Like, oh, you're like a progressive leftist. That means you're this and you're that, and you believe all of these things, and it must mean what? And that's almost never true, right? Like those stories that we come up with are so stereotypical and based in a lot of bias and a lot of like, you know, kind of news media coverage, you know, just like the big things that we hear. And so we don't even get to the point where we say, oh, tell me why you believe that. Like, tell me why. Explain to me, help me understand. Like, tell me more about that position. Like, we don't do that. So because we look at the one thing and we disconnect, and I don't want to talk to you and I can't be your friend and I this and you know, people get to make the decisions. Some people, that's their boundary, right? But I think that's one of the things that like disconnects us.
Yeah.
And what I have found in, because I do have friends who have different religious beliefs than me, different political beliefs than me. I do have some boundaries around who and, you know, what kinds of ideas I will like have conversations about and let into my space. But what I have found when I have talked to those people is that they agree on we agree on like maybe 75 or 80% of what we hope, like what the world we want to live in, and we disagree on how we get there, right?
Wow.
But like for the most part, we agree on what we want. They're people I enjoy, right? I love their energy. They're funny. They're like fun to be with, right? And we agree on most of the things. We like the same movies and shows, right? And we disagree on the how, right? Now, there are people who have totally different ideas about the world we want to live in, and I'm not talking about that. But I'm saying that I think that what we would find more often, I think we would find that more often if we opened ourselves up to that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the label or the character judgment, immediately you're blinded to the person behind that. You don't see them at all.
Not at all.
And you don't pursue ways to get to know who they are as an individual. And it's a huge loss, I think.
Totally.
Going back to when you speak to groups or when you're teaching this work, where do you notice the resistance? If there's resistance towards, you know, making this a part of your life or getting curious about this and what this would look like in your life, where do you see that resistance coming up?
Yeah, I think that, so I will say that like in the work that I do these days, I tend not to see resistance as often because people tend to find me when they're like ready to, you know, get involved, you know, get to be in the conversation. And that's not universally true, but that's mostly true. What I do see out in the world, like in kind of the broader practice, this is one of those things that's going to sound uncomfortable, and I don't know a better way to say it, but the thing that keeps people from being open to this is this sense, like this kind of desire to just be right.
Wow.
Like, you know,
just
like
kind
it's
of
very simple. It's like being so certain about what you know, like what you think you know, or and what you believe, like the harder you hold to the idea that what you believe is the 100% right thing, the more difficult it is for you to be open to another possibility.
Why do you think that matters so much to that? And I know we're speaking in generalities here, but that desire to be right, why?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot. I think for different people, it's different things. I think a lot of it is, I think that for some people, they are in a group that benefits from the privilege, right?
True.
That can be a lot of different types of privilege we can be talking about, right? So we just don't even, you tend not to think about it, and it's just how you are. I think for some people, It's that, we believed something for so long that, and have in some cases organized our whole life around it and made decisions on it. This could even be true like college, right? Like the
Yeah.
idea that like go to school, get all your grades, go to college, get the degree, take out the loans, get the master's degree, go get a job, right? Everything is going to be fine, right? So
Yeah.
now what we have is like people, this is a perfect example actually. We're so programmed to that normal thing, right?
Yeah.
Even though we know that it's not a net positive investment for most people, that we still do it.
That's so true.
Right?
And there's
But
no
like,
guarantee. There's
and
no
there's no
guarantee
guarantee.
that you put your coins in the machine. There's no guarantee that you're going to get whatever button you
Yeah.
push.
But we're so like
That's
many
so
of us are
interesting.
so focused on like making our kids do the exact same thing and holding them
That's true.
accountable for these things that like are stressing them out, that in some cases aren't good for them, right? So it's not just in religion. Like we have this pattern in a lot of places. So anywhere where we think that we're so right is
Yeah.
a possible place to miss things.
Wow. That's
Which
really
is
good
why, like in our
insight.
community, there are community members that will always like make jokes about this, because my answer to most things is like, oh, it depends. Like I really try to practice this idea that like this, I know lots of things. Like I have a lot of education, and I'm finishing my PhD and all this expertise. And when I enter a coaching session, I still am like, I don't know what's best for this person. I don't. Right? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like there might be something I'm not seeing. Like I don't know. Like I don't know what the answer to that is. I trust my ability to find it, to talk through things, to use tools, to collaborate with people, to be in uncomfortable conversations, right? To solve problems. But like,
Right.
and I love being smart, and I do know lots of things. And like I try not to be so certain about anything that I, risk, risk missing something important.
Right. Yeah. Not the least of which would be a relationship, a cherished relationship.
For
This has
sure.
been so fascinating, so good. The time has just flown. Um, a final question that I like to ask
No.
my listeners, the name of my podcast is Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. To know something with certainty is praised and prized in a religious community.
Mm-hmm.
And to know something beyond the shadow of a doubt is something that I heard growing up, and it was definitely rewarded in various ways. So when my faith journey took a pivot a few years back, and I realized I had some questions and some doubts that I could no longer, resist. And it was in my best interest, my mental health's best interest to lean into those. I decided to create this podcast. Well, I felt called to do this actually.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about feeling a calling. And I put it off for a year because it was just too scary.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I always like to ask my guests, what does it mean to you to live beyond the shadow of doubt? I purposely dropped the A,
Yeah.
trying to release that negative stigma associated with doubts and questions.
Yeah, I think it is. I actually think it's just kind of like what we were just talking about, that it means that like I know nothing for certain,
Hmm.
right? And that like,
And releasing that
yeah,
insistence or that need to be right. That's
yeah.
really so good. Well, we mentioned your community called The Exchange, and I believe it's
Hmm.
open. Is it still open?
It is, yeah. The exchange is
Yay. Okay.
open.
So we'll leave that link. And if those who are interested in learning more about this work can join your exchange, very
Yeah,
cost effective. And also we'll leave a link to your book, The Antiracist Business Book, an
great.
equity-centered approach to work, wealth, and leadership. And anything else you'd like to leave with our listeners or offers that you want them to know about?
I don't think so. I think the exchange is like really the perfect place to get started. It's a community, it's a professional association for coaches and leaders who
Okay.
want to stay informed about diversity, equity, and inclusion as it relates to their practice. So, like, if you like this conversation, you will
Yeah.
love the things that we're talking about every month in the exchange.
Okay. Well, I will definitely leave that link for listeners.
Perfect.
And before we finish, I just like to throw out a few quick questions for us to get to know you. Just looking for one word answers here. Tell us
Okay.
your favorite book.
Oh,
It can be your own.
that's my favorite book. What? Jeez. I feel stunned. My favorite book actually right now is The Sum of Us.
The Sum of Us.
The
Okay.
Sum of Us. Yeah.
Beautiful. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm an introvert.
Awesome. And who is your favorite artist?
My favorite, like, what kind of artist?
You pick.
Any
You
kind of
pick.
artist?
Yeah.
Oh, I am really into I have so many answers to this question, but Lauryn Hill is certainly my favorite. She is on a big comeback
Oh,
tour right now, a big
yeah.
anniversary tour. So yeah, shout out to Lauryn Hill,
Sweet. Okay. Are you
who
a
is
night
all of the things.
Are you a night owl or a morning lark?
Oh, it depends on the time of the month.
That's awesome. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. And do you have a celebrity crush?
Do I have a celebrity crush?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't. Oh, yeah. Of course, I'm like going through my Rolodex. But Idris Elba. Idris Elba for sure.
Okay. And then do you do still or carbonated water? Or are you a diet soda fan?
Oh, carbonated water. Give me sparkling water any day.
Yum. And finally, the furthest place you've traveled.
Indonesia.
Indonesia. Okay,
Yes.
that's awesome. I have not made it there. Well, Trudy, thank you so very much. This has been
Thank
wonderful. I appreciate
you.
your time.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun. I'm glad that I got to have this conversation with
Me
you.
too. Thank you so much. Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast is a proud member of the Dialogue Podcast Network, which is part of the Dialogue Journal found at dialoguejournal.com. Founder Eugene England was a Mormon writer, teacher, and scholar who wrote, "My faith encourages my curiosity and awe. It thrusts me out into relationship with all creation and encourages me to enter into dialogue. My hope is that this podcast is an extension of that vision." Hopeful Spaces is a Dallas Hope Charities component of Hopeful Discussions, sponsored by Mercedes-Benz Financial Services USA. It's a free monthly parent, ally, or caregiver support group facilitated by Megan Skidmore Coaching. Email chc@dallashopecharities.org for more info. Visit meganskidmorecoaching.com to find this podcast and additional free resources, including the link for a complimentary coaching session. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram for more, or to send me a DM. Help the podcast grow. Please follow, review, and share with a friend.